Who are you being when you're being most yourself?
Oh, wow. I hope I can answer that question well.
There's
I
no
know
right answer in
I'll
answer.
have a perfect answer in a few days. It
It's
will
not
be
a test.
it will be following me as I try to sleep, and then I'll think of a perfect answer. I have never been happier than now. I am
Mm.
so content with my life and satisfied with what I've achieved. And it's not about money or status, which I had more before, to be honest.
Mm.
It's about waking up in the morning and doing exactly what I set out to do. Hi, I'm Renata Bernarde, and this is the Job Hunting Podcast, where I interview experts and professionals and discuss issues that are important for job hunters and those who are working to advance their careers. So make sure that you subscribe and follow, and let's dive right in. Here's the story behind this episode. Goodman has been a guest on this podcast a couple of times. I will link her episodes below because I want you to go and check them out. Listeners love Cassie. My clients love Cassie. They have her books. She teaches a masterclass inside my group coaching program, Job Hunting Made Simple. And we collaborate on many things together because there is a symbiosis on what we care about and how we serve our clients that work really well in combination. A few months ago, Cassie started her own podcast. Her show is called True Power, and you can find it on Apple and Spotify. It's such a great listen, everyone. Her guests are real professionals just like you, and Cassie is great at bringing out their stories and allowing them to feel comfortable with their vulnerability. The first episode blew my mind. I totally recommend you go and listen to at least that one in particular. I still think about it all the time, and I want to have her guest on my show. The guest name is Jasmine Malki, or is it? I don't want to spoil it for you, so please go and check out that episode. So I was her second guest for her second episode of True Power. It's always a blast when Cassie and I have a chat. I'll be honest with you, it really flows naturally and we work super well together. I decided to ask her permission to share that episode of True Power here with you today because I listened to it again recently and I thought, well, I don't think anyone knows these things about me. I haven't shared this insight on my show. There's also a few pearls that I wanted my childhood friends to listen to, as I love them so much and I think they will enjoy the stories that I shared with Cassie. So, what is this episode about anyway? It's about finding happiness. It's about planning and adjusting your plans until they feel right. Then doing new plans because you changed or because the world changed. It's about knowing who you are and finding a way to be comfortable with it and deal with the criticism and the challenges along the way. It's working with your talents, not against it, and giving you examples of my own life to illustrate all of these ideas in real life. I really love this chat. Cassie, you are a gem, and I can't wait to have lunch with you soon and plan new projects for 2024. And to you, listener, I hope that this chat inspires you. I would recommend asking yourself the same questions that Cassie asked me in this episode. Write those answers down. This could be a great project for you to do over the holidays. I will have all the questions that Cassie asked me listed in the episode show notes to make this project easier for you. And finally, in this episode, I mentioned strengths and talents a lot, and I referred to my favorite strengths assessment for career planning, which is Talent Predicts. I am a Talent Predicts global partner. I think I was, in fact, the first one they announced when Talent Predicts was founded a few years ago, or 2 years ago now. Oh gosh, time flies. And I'm very proud to be collaborating with them. When you do a Talent Predicts assessment, you get this amazing report that lists your top talents, your personal values, your career drivers. It's all explained for you in a report that you can use to prep for interviews, to write your personal pitch, to write your LinkedIn About section. I kid you not, the report is awesome. So go to my website and go to my services page and learn more about Talent Predicts. My service is called Find My Talents. So if you click on Find My Talents, you will find a Talent Predicts assessment. I charge 97 Australian dollars at the moment. This price will go up very soon, unfortunately. So if you're listening to this later, I'm sorry if the price has gone up. So it's 97 Australian dollars. If you are in the US or the UK, the Australian dollar is very good for you. So I would urge you to have a look in and see if you're interested in finding more about your talents by doing the Talent Predicts report. I love the names of my services. They are all very simple. Find My Talents is exactly what you will get when you do the Talent Predicts assessment. Then we have Reset Your Career, Job Hunting Made Simple, the other two services that you will find on my website. And of course, the name of this podcast, the Job Hunting Podcast. Yes, it is exactly. It does what it's supposed to do, right? My website, for those who don't know, is renatabernarde.com. That's RENATABERNARDE.com. And there will be a link to it in the episode show notes. And without further ado, here's Cassandra Goodman and me talking about talents, happiness, and why first plans are never the best ones.
My first question is this. Can you share with us a moment in your history, a moment in your life when you felt like you were not being true to yourself?
Oh, okay. I need to choose only one. I
Just
think there are
one that comes to
there are
mind.
many
Yeah.
moments I wasn't being true to myself. I dropped out of uni a couple of times early on, and I always say this to my clients. I wanted to like things, but I didn't. And it's the same when, for example, you really want to like to go to the gym, but you don't like to go to the gym.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a certain type of person as an adult. And I tried really hard to be that type of person that I romanticized in my head. And I went to university thinking that, if I studied hard and if I did this, degree and if I had this sort of friendships, that I would achieve that. But it made me unhappy. And it broke my heart, to be honest, because I had already thought it all through because I'm a planner. So I thought if I had planned it well enough, it would just happen. And I think a lot of my clients and other professionals are still in that kind of situation when you think about something you want to achieve and you work really hard and then you don't want to let it go, even though you know it's not true to you. Do you find
Yeah.
that with your clients as well?
Yes. Oh,
Mm.
yes. Absolutely. And this idea that, wait a minute, this was the plan. I've got to
Mm.
stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my favorite sayings from Agile methodology is actually the first plan is the worst plan. But we tend to forget that the first plan is the worst plan, because when we make that first plan, in the case of your story, you didn't really perhaps yet understand what you wanted. Perhaps that kind of sequence of events that you'd mapped out in your head was a standard sequence of events that one must do in order to be, air quoting here, successful. So I'm curious about that plan that you kind of logically constructed, that when you start actually enacting that plan in your heart, you knew this is not the right plan for me. It seemed good in theory, but in my lived experience of executing this plan, it's not really resonating with who I really am. And so I'm curious about what insight you have about where that plan came from. If it didn't kind of emerge from within your heart as your plan, what's your understanding of where you absorbed that was a plan you should follow?
Well, that's actually an interesting story, and I wonder what you will make of it because it came from my heart. It came from my love of history, of story, of art and beauty. And my first degree was history. I wanted to be a historian, and more specifically, an art historian. And I went to university. So my idea of success, my ambition, I believe everybody is ambitious. but that doesn't mean that my ambition was to make a lot of money. At the time it wasn't, to make a lot of money and go up in the corporate ladder. Far from it. I despised that sort of career. I didn't want that career for myself. I wanted to be an intellectual, a scholar, somebody who would sit and analyze things and work in museums. And that was what I wanted to do. So it came from, in fact, a talent that I have. So when I did my Via character strengths, the first talent was appreciation of art and beauty. And it almost made me cry because by then I had already given up on becoming an art historian. The reason why it wasn't a suitable career for me and a path for me to follow was because I need people. I am an extrovert, kind of, I think as I get older, I really seek out opportunities to be alone, but I really love being around people, and I love giving advice, and I love leading, I have to admit. And slowly, as I got older and matured, I understood the corporate world and the opportunities in it. And I wanted that more and more as time went by. So I moved from art history to civil engineering, which was also not a good move for me. Very quickly, I decided that I didn't like what I was studying. And then when I moved to Australia, that's when I finally finished a degree, and that was the Bachelor of Commerce. And I loved every moment of it. I enjoyed every single subject. I think it was partly because I was older, but partly because everything that was being said just resonated with me. There was a part of me that instinctively understood what was being told, and I knew I could do the role of a manager, the role of a colleague or a member of a team. I knew I could do it. It was very interesting, and I hadn't felt that before in my previous studies.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, we've known each other for many years, but I did not realize that appreciation of beauty and excellence was your number one character strength. But that makes perfect sense. For those of you who watch this on the video, Renata has this beautiful office with this beautiful art behind her. When I think about we were talking about our websites recently and the care that you take on creating a beautifully designed digital experience that your clients interact with. And when I think about the feedback you've given me on my books and your noticing of the detail that I work so hard to create a high quality book, and your deep appreciation of the quality and effort I put into my books, through those examples, those three examples, I see your essence of this appreciation of beauty and excellence just really radiating through you, and that what was lacking in that first degree was the combination of that with the community piece, with the leadership piece, and perhaps with the bigger impact piece. So that story makes a lot of sense to me, and it helps me better kind of get clearer on your essence, and this blend of beauty, appreciation of beauty and excellence with community, with leadership. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense.
And I love that. I'm a true believer that everybody should do the Via character strengths and other strengths assessment tests. I work with Talent Predicts, which is more aligned with the work I do as a career coach, because it's so good to validate things you already know about yourself and also be able to explain it to people. So when growing up, for example, in my family, I was always known as being a fussy person. She's such a fussy person. Things have to be a certain way for Renata, what she dresses and her room and how she decorates everything. And people used to make fun of me, of course, because that's what we do when you're kids. Kids can be quite cruel and family members can be cruel too. And now I look back and I say, well, that's just who I am. And I embrace that. So I was in Sydney for a couple of days last week. And we went to go to the opera, which my husband and I love. We love going to the opera. He likes it more than I do, but I appreciate it. I love art and I appreciate everything. And there could be nothing better for me to do than the next day go to the Sydney Opera House and sit there for 3.5 hours watching Don Quixote. Like, there's nothing more rewarding for me than that. And when you learn about your strengths, it doesn't necessarily need to be applied to your work. It's applied to you as a person, right? It can be a hobby. It can be how you fill your time. It can be how you talk to your friends, the sort of relationships you have, how you raise your kids. Like, it can be part of other things, not just your career. And that's what I had to come to terms with. I appreciate art, but I don't necessarily need to be doing it or critiquing it. It's not part of, what I want to do as my career.
But if I could offer something up there in terms of this idea that our essence doesn't necessarily need to, flow through or permeate our work, I would offer a different perspective, because I see your essence is this when I think about essence, I think about there's all different active ingredients to our essence, and like drops of essential oil, and you've got quite a few drops of appreciation of beauty and excellence in there, and then you have a few drops of community and leadership and other beautiful aspects of your essence. But I do see this particular aspect of your essence, who you are at your core, who you're being when you're being most yourself, which is a human who has a deep appreciation and reverence for beauty and excellence. I see that shine through your work very, very clear. I see it in your
Yes.
workspace. I see it in your website. I see it in the feedback you give. I see it in what you pay attention to. So maybe I feel like our essence does illuminate all aspects of our lives if it's activated. But then sometimes it's invisible, because you just do what you do. You can't imagine having some sort of ugly, clunky website, right? You couldn't live with that.
Yeah. But you have to remember that before I had my own business, I was an executive, implementing projects and CRM solutions like Salesforce, or hiring lots of people and structuring businesses. And that was something that I knew it was part of my delivery and impact that I could have in an organization. I knew that I could deliver. For example, for many years, I organized very large events or very important events. I've done events at the Sydney Opera House, in Oxford, in Australian Parliament, here in Melbourne, Crown Casino, for, state premiers and governors and prime ministers and whatnot, like people really VIPs. And I know that appreciation and that strength was one of the components of making everybody have an amazing experience at the events that I was involved in. I know that. But that's not something that, when you're thinking about your career, or when I'm working with my clients, right, and they get the results from their VIA character strengths and it looks odd, the first thing they say is like, why am I an accountant? So we need to kind of do what you're doing, dig deep and kind of analyze it and reflect. You're right, but the other thing I didn't used to do was to convey that as I was being employed, I used to focus more on the skills and the experience that I had, and then wow them with the presentation, like it's a hard sell to say, oh, my top strengths. What are your strengths, Renata, when you're talking to a headhunter? Like, oh, it's
appreciation of beauty and excellence.
Yes.
When can I start?
You know what I mean? You have to translate it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in the how. We all have a unique how we work, right? People who work with you experience the way you work, and the way you work, the experience you give to your clients is unique to you. And I see that appreciation of beauty and excellence shining through the way you're being with me, with your clients, with all that you come in contact with. And I think that's been really a clarifying conversation. It makes a lot of sense. A few, bits of getting to know you have fallen into place there. And I think you're a great example of someone who's embracing and activating their essence with awareness and with discernment, of course, because it's got to be an appropriate translation of that essence into the work at hand. But I think you're a beautiful example of someone who's living into that. And so I have one more question, because I think that was a wonderful conversation and a rich reflection on the importance of understanding and activating our essence. So my question is really about a moment in time when you got feedback from the outside world that perhaps this way of being, this deep appreciation for beauty and excellence, what the world perhaps labeled as a fussiness. Was there a moment that sticks with you, maybe as a younger child, a moment when the world around you said, Renata, you're too fussy, you need to be less fussy? And was there a moment that stuck with you when that created some level of incongruence or challenge for you in being told that, to basically not be yourself?
I think there are funny moments. There are funny moments. I'm sure that there were times at work when people lost their patience with me. And I remember getting feedback about things like that. And so let's talk about work first. The way that I used to explain, the importance of creating an experience was by communicating it and kind of share. So I'm having difficulty finding the words here, but it was really almost creating like a manifest. Okay, this is like, what is the name of Tom Cruise in that movie? Jerry Maguire kind of situation.
Manifesto,
Right? Yeah. So a
manifesto.
a manifesto, and I'm big on that. Even when I created my own business and it was just me, I still created a manifesto for it. But what I used to say, so let's go back to the example of those events, was like, I'm being fussy and I'm being particular because we compete with everything else. For somebody to wake up at 6 a.m. to attend an event at 7 a.m. at Crown Casino, which is like an hour away from where they live, you're competing with time with family. You're not competing with another industry association that's organizing another event. No, you're competing with time in bed, time with family, taking the kids to school. So it was really explaining why it was so important when they landed at Crown Casino for a breakfast at 7 a.m. that they were absolutely wowed by the experience, that we had thought things through, who they were going to sit next to, who was on stage, what sort of topics were going to be most interesting for them, what sort of food were they going to eat. So I was really into that experience, and I wanted people to go out and want to come back again next week, right? So it had to have that. So it was over explaining. The funny things really happened in my childhood, teenage years, and adulthood, where I basically forced my friends to read books and appreciate art and go to the ballet with me. And
the Forced Appreciation Society.
Yes. And they remember it, and I was back in my home country last year, and we were looking at diaries, and it was so cute. Like, this friend of mine had all of her diaries from grade 1 all the way to university, and we were reading it over the weekend. We went to the beach together and we were reading it, and there would be one entry where she was having fun with friends and doing sort of something super cheeky or naughty, and then the other entry was like, oh, Renata came over and we studied for English together. Like, I was the one that they will call when they either needed to study or understand something, or they needed advice, or they were running away. And this friend in particular used to run away from home. And where would she go? She would come to my place.
I'm sure that was a relief for her parents. And so it sounds like, though, even as a young child, you really have this strong awareness. No, this is me. This is what I need to do, and I'm going to engage and enroll others in this appreciation of what matters here. So I think that's really, really beautiful that as you look back to your childhood and in your friends' diaries, you see this enthusiasm for beauty and excellence shining through. And so it doesn't sound like this message from the outside world that saw this appreciation through this lens of someone who was too fussy. It doesn't sound like that had
There was a
dampening?
mix of that. There was a bit of bullying, but my close friends, who are my friends to this day, gave me constructive feedback. I remember, a friend of mine, I actually tried to have a podcast with her because she's so funny, and didn't work. The time difference. She's still in Brazil. She's in Rio. And she used to come into my bedroom and say, "Your bedroom is too neat. Are you a teenager or are you like 80 years old? Like everything is so tidy." And I remember thinking, yeah, that's actually uncool. So I need to find a style for my bedroom that is a little bit sort of a bit more relaxed. And I changed a few things, like the way I
Relax, but
organize my
beautiful.
books. Yeah. So
Love
before
that.
it was trendy to have the bed linen a bit sort of more soft on the bed, I created that trend. I remember sort of, okay, this is too nice to neat. Let me just soften this up a bit. At a throw.
I love it. I love it. The adapting to what was socially the socially acceptable bounds of appreciation for precision and beauty. And so I think my question then is around how today, given all this, you're a leader who reflects, you're a woman who reflects deeply, given all the reflection and the inner work that you've done, how would you describe then who you're being when you're being most yourself? How would you encapsulate in language, the vibrant, pure expression of who you are at your core? Who are you being when you're being most yourself?
Oh, wow. I hope I can answer that question well.
There's
I
no
know
right answer, Renata.
I'll have a perfect answer in a few days. It
This is
will
not
be
a test.
it will be following me as I try to sleep, and then I'll think of a perfect answer. I have never been happier than now. I am so content with my life and satisfied with what I've achieved. And it's not about money or status, which I had more before, to be honest. It's about waking up in the morning and doing exactly what I set out to do. This plan of being a career coach has been bubbling along for decades. And I thought I would do it much later in life. And I just brought it forward by a decade. And it was the best thing I did. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Keep going.
I wake up in the morning, and yes, there are stresses, and I have a whole bunch of things that I would love to have done already and it haven't been done yet. When you're a business owner, you and I know it's all about time management. But I enjoy what I'm doing so much, and working with clients and seeing the results and learning from the clients that I have now and applying those learnings to the next lot of clients that I'll have, in a few weeks or days' time. That is just the best feeling in the world. I have never been happier.
How do you describe that feeling? Like, how do you feel in this moment where you're like, okay, this is it. I'm doing the work I'm born to do in the way I was born to do it. So, one of the things I say is that I help leaders love who they're being, not just what they do, because when we stay connected to our essence, that's what becomes possible, right? So tell us a little bit more, give us a glimpse in your inner experience on these days when you just know in your bones you're doing what you were meant to be doing in the way you're meant to be doing it.
Yes. I'll give you an example of what happened in the past couple of days. Because I am my own boss, and I know this is not always the case when you have a job. Having said that, I have felt this sense of inner satisfaction and peace and accomplishment when I was working as well. And it's about finding the right culture and fit and team that works with you. But because I have total control of my business, I focus on working with my strengths, right? So on the Talent Predicts assessment, my top strengths are understanding others and leading and sort of foresight and thinking ahead. And if you're a career coach, that's exactly what you should be doing to help your clients. So I am focusing on what I know how to do well and just designing my work life around that. And for those talents on the wheel that I couldn't care less about, I don't worry. So precision, for example, I'm not precise. I'm not a precision person, and I've never been. And that's why I've always loved to work as part of a team, because, I could choose things to delegate or escalate, and precision was one of those. But now, if I record an episode, which I did yesterday for the Job Hunting podcast, and it's not a 10 out of 10, I don't fret about it. I don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know that I have a community that will listen to this and take stuff away from it, because I still recorded it with the best intentions. And I know that there's a message there for someone. And I'm not going to re-record it over and over again until it loses its essence, like as you say, and becomes something too sort of plasticky. And no, it's fine. I'm doing it one episode a week. Of course there will be things that are not going to be perfect, but that's okay. And I go to sleep at night and I'm not worried about it.
Yes, so that's beautiful. So if I can reflect back what I took from that answer about who are you being when you're being fully yourself, you use the word, there's a sense of inner peace, there's a sense of satisfaction, there's a capacity to hold things lightly, there's a capacity to trust that the goal is not perfection, the goal is authenticity and realness and connection and sharing. And so, does that sound right for you, that when you're being yourself, when your essence is activated and you're kind of getting out of your own way, and what I mean by that is that the parts of you that perhaps we all have parts that are less empowered, when those parts are quiet and you're connected to your core, you're a person that's peaceful, that's content, that's satisfied, and that's able to continue to create this wonderful work, these conversations that you're capturing and sharing, and all the other conversations you're part of. You continue to put this goodness out in the world in a way that really embodies a sense of lightness and playfulness, which I think is when we're at our best, right?
Yes, for me it is, and I find that resonates with my personality and with the talents that I have, the personal values that I have. I know that for some of my clients that would not resonate.
No, because they're not you.
No. And I don't want people to listen to this and think, oh, I want to be as relaxed as Renata is. I have even I have two boys. My oldest, he has a strong sense of justice about things he needs to do in the world, and it comes from a warrior kind of mentality, which I do not have. So sometimes I just need to watch him and observe and not judge or not criticize or not sort of be scared by the things he decides to do. And some of my clients have, completely different personalities as well, and career drivers and personal values. So I think it's important for people to be kind to themselves and not sort of mimic or envision somebody and see that as an ideal when they have to actually look from inside. And you're the best person to talk about that, in fact, not me.
No, I'm not for a moment suggesting do what Renata does, be what Renata
I just worry that people will listen. And I know I'm a very calm person and I have a calm voice, and I get a lot of feedback about that, about the podcast being a calming listen for somebody who is in distress or lost their jobs, or I get a lot of feedback about that. So I feel like I'm in the zone that I should be, that's the sort of area that I should work with. And I think that there will be other coaches that have a very different essence, and they will be more go, and more motivational and inspirational. And that's definitely not something that they will get from me. I'm like, go rest, go sleep.
Well, I think we've talked about this, right? The space between roles is such a precious space, right? It is a place for reflection and pausing and taking our time to figure out who am I really, and what is the work that's going to help me to best serve and to be myself. So, personally, I think the energy and the essence that you bring to the work you do is exactly what's required at these really precious and rare moments in time between roles, where we have this opportunity to reflect deeply and figure out who am I and what do I want to do with this one short and precious life. So thank you so much, Renata. I have loved our conversation. Thank you for all that you shared. And I hope we have the chance to have more conversations. Keep being yourself.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Cassie.